The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus took Peter, James, and John, his brother, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light. And behold, Moses and Elijah appeared to them, conversing with him. Then Peter said to Jesus in reply, Lord, it is good that we are here. If you wish, I will make 3 tents here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. While he was still speaking, behold, a bright cloud cast shadow over them. Then from the cloud came a voice that said, This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. When the disciples heard this, they fell prostrated and were very much afraid. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, Rise and do not be afraid. And when the disciples raised their eyes, they saw no one else but Jesus alone. As they were coming down from the mountain, Jesus charged them, Do not tell the vision to anyone until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead. The Gospel of the Lord.
Today, when we're listening to the Transfiguration, we see something very important and very beautiful for our lives. I was very struck by the fact of this shadow, and it's very deep and very important for our lives. This shadow, which is from a bright cloud. I don't know how many bright clouds that you've seen. I'm from England, and usually they're gray. But this bright cloud is kind of a reflection of Christ, who's transfigured. That is shining white. And this shadow is the presence of God. But this shadow is the presence of God in our lives, in our histories, in our stories, in everything that we live, in many things that have happened, many events, things we don't like, things you want to get rid of, things we think, there's God's love. But the presence of God is in the whole of our life, not just the bits we like. Because God speaks to us. God speaks to you. This is why he says, Behold, this is my Son. Listen to him. He wants to communicate to you and to me, to save us, to love us, to show us the right way so that we can live, so that we can be loved by God as we are being created to be loved by God, to be able to love the other. This is our happiness. And many times we cannot do it. We have a shadow over our life that is dark, right? Like a cloud with the rain following is everywhere, right? But this cloud, this presence of God, has been revealed to us in Jesus Christ. This is what we are living in Lent. Lent is not to make ourselves miserable, to do things for God. Right, I'm going to do this 40 days. Today's a Sunday, I have a break. Right? No. All of this is to remind us, to bring us to conversion, so that we can go back to the presence of God, to go back to his love So yes, for sure, if we see that we have walked away from his love by our actions, by our sins, and we start to see them, don't panic. God's not making like rules and regulations. He wants us to see them so that we come back to him. He wants us to see them so that we can be forgiven by him. He wants us to see them, the reality of our life, so that we can be strengthened by him. That's the second reading, right? Bear your share of hardship for the gospel, with the strength that comes from God. He doesn't say, bear your hardship for the gospel. Don't do anything wrong. Be perfect. And don't do anything wrong. And do it all by yourself. And then at the end of time, I will check on you. No, he doesn't say that. Bear your share of the hardship for the gospel with the strength that comes from God. Listen to him, he says. Listen to him. And that's why he wants us to be in communion with him, to receive his love, to receive his mercy, to receive life from him. We have been created for that. And what a tragedy if we live all of our life and we never experience that, right? Because we have our idea of what is religion, what is to please God, what is to do things. No. God breaks all of that so that we can grow in faith. So everything is new. Everything is fresh. Everything is full of his love. This is what happens with Abraham. God makes a promise to him, starts to make him move. Makes a promise to him. But it's not only to him, it's to all of us, to the whole of mankind, which is fulfilled in Jesus Christ. Go forth from the land of your kinsfolk and from your father's house to a land that I will show you. What do you hear in that? Do you hear anything in that? I hear the nativity. I hear the annunciation. Right? Christ has to leave his father's house, right? He leaves his father's house to a place where his father had prepared for him. This is where he becomes flesh. And he, in becoming flesh, fulfills the promises of God. Fulfills them. Which is to save us. Which is to destroy death. Which is to overcome sin. Which is to overcome evil. This is the hardship of the gospel. Is the cross. And God comes in his presence, in Jesus Christ, so that he goes to the cross. He goes and faces evil. He goes and faces sin, the things that we don't have the strength to do. The things that we are afraid to do, to love the other. To love the enemy. To respond good when somebody does evil against us. Who does that? Who wants to do that? We get revenge, right? As soon as something happens, inside, we wait for the moment, and we can't help it sometimes. And this is why this comes as a good news for you and for me. This shadow of God that is over all of our lives. This is the gospel. This is the good news. This is the presence of God revealed in Jesus Christ. This is why he tells us and reminds us now in this time of Lent. Behold, this is my son. He doesn't come to see if you're keeping all the rules and regulations of religion. He doesn't come to condemn you. He doesn't come to check if you're being naughty or nice. Oh no, that's Christmas, sorry. He comes to love you. That's it. And sin is so serious that we can commit, which is always against love. He allows his son to go to the cross. He allows his son to go to the cross, to suffer, to experience the evilness, the fullness of evil, of resentment, of jealousy, of anger. And he feels it in his flesh. So that we can feel the love of God. We can experience the love of God. So that we can come alive in him. This is what happens to the apostles, right? They are there, terrified, full of fear. Full of fear. This is humanity. This is the consequence of sin of Adam and Eve, that we are full of fear, terror, of being overwhelmed by suffering, overwhelmed by things that we don't have control over. And the Lord comes today in this celebration, reminding us, listen to him, listen to him. And this transfiguration is exactly that. Christ is transfigured, helping his apostles know and taste the resurrection. Because when they see him crucified on the cross, it's too much for them. Why do you think they run away? Why do you think they run away? Because they cannot bear the reality of what Christ is living. They are full of fear, full of terror. This is why he gives them a taste. He is transfigured. And they see him white. White is always a sign of the resurrection. This is why at the tomb they are dressed in white. But it's bright. It's very interesting, right? You know that colors absorb, like black or anything. All the other colors absorb light. The only one color that doesn't absorb light is white. It reflects it. All the other colors take, right? And we do that. But the white reflects. It gives. This is what Christ does when he is crucified. This is what Christ does when he comes in the flesh, when he is incarnated, when he comes as a baby. He reveals the love of God that gives. This is the shadow. This is the shadow of God present in our life. Him giving us life. And this is what the apostles have to experience, have to learn. And this is why he says, listen to them. And Christ says to them, get up, stand, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. I am with you. I am with you. And this is why we are reminded in Lent always about the Easter vigil, the resurrection, the love of God. We are walking on the strength of a promise through Lent, because we are going towards the resurrection of Easter. And that begins today. This is the shadow of God that comes over to us, that we can feel and live in the Eucharist, in this Mass, where he gives himself to us, right? Will he not give himself to you today? First in the Word, then in his body and his blood, so that we can look towards him, so that we can be loved by him, so that we can receive life from him. And all he says to us, listen to him. Listen. Do not be afraid. So then, let us enter into this reality of being loved by God. Let's enter into this reality that all the days of our life, all the events of our life, all the things that are happening is covered by the presence of God. And God has entered into it, into human history, our personal histories, and wants us to raise up with him. And he gives us the strength in that today, here, today. So then, let us rejoice. Let us believe in him. Let us follow him, and let us listen to him, where he gives us words of life and not of death.